Welcome to Group Chat, and thank you for your patience. We are a show on the two-way platform where the ethos is peace, love, and understanding, and the presumption of grace for all. I am thrilled to be joined by my co-hosts, conservative Emma Jo Morris, progressive Nina Turner, moderate Democrat Dan Turrentine, and very sadly, we are missing our fifth wheel, Robby Soave, our libertarian, who will be back hopefully with us next week. So we have a great show today. We're going to be taking your questions, as always, and comments, so you can join the conversation. And I'm going to tell you the three topics we'll be discussing so you can start thinking about which topic you might want to join in for from the top of the show. Our first story, we're going to talk about debanking. There's going to be apparently a new executive order signed by Donald Trump, the president, against debanking, so we'll discuss that. We're also going to talk about New York City's mayoral race. Can Trump actually change the outcome, or will Mamdani win? And for our third topic, you actually heard it here first. For our July 4th special, we talked about the 2028 election and our predictions for who was going to be running. It is now being reported in the Daily Mail that our own...
Which is the Bible.
Yep. That our own Emma Jo Morris correctly predicted a certain underdog joining the race. Steve Bannon is reportedly thinking about going up against Vice President J.D. Vance in 2028, and we are very thrilled that Emma Jo had this story first, so we will get into that as well. Please join the conversation. We really want to hear from you guys. Three great topics for you to consider joining in on. Okay, all right, first topic. So President Donald Trump and the White House are expected to sign an executive order to put an end to regulators and banks shutting down accounts, also known as debanking for political reasons. So broad debanking regulatory language, which was enacted by former President Barack Obama in 2013, allowed regulators to direct banks to shut down accounts for something called reputational risk, and directed regulators to treat negative public opinion of account holders as heavily as a serious financial risk. And President Trump this week revealed that he himself had been debanked over the January 6th episode, in which a lot of other people were also debanked. So there's sort of a bunch of angles that we could take here. Do we all agree that this debanking probably almost exclusively impacted conservatives? No. Okay, so Emma Jo, tell us give us a little backstory here and how you see this executive order.
Yeah, well, so I've looked into this issue pretty deeply, and it seems to reflect a lot of what happened in social media companies leading up to 2016 and 2020, where, especially in 2020, like I experienced this firsthand, where these companies have the right to kick people off of their platform or out of their services, and nobody disputes that. But the government obviously doesn't have the right to censor. So what the government will do when they want to censor is go and nudge companies. And in the bank's case, actually, so they were doing this in social media, but in the bank's case, like these regulators, it's basically a large bureaucracy. And as we know, bureaucracies can run amok very easily. They have tons of bureaucrats, thousands of bureaucrats that basically get to exercise action at their whims. And in the bank's case, they can be fined billions of dollars. And those fines have gotten that high. So, if the bank says, hey, we have if the regulator says, hey, we have a reputational risk here post-January 6th, we need the suspicious activity reports for everybody who could have been in D.C. at that time, let's say. The bank doesn't really have a choice. They have a fiduciary duty to comply, and they don't want to get in trouble the same way social media companies did not want to get in trouble with the FBI.
So what I think is so interesting is that this was around since 2013, long before, January 6th was even, a glimmer in our eyes, if you will.
Yeah.
Nina, is this something you were aware of? Is this something that you're opposed to? Where do you come down on the debanking?
No, I was not aware, but I'm glad we're talking about this. I don't think you should weaponize power in that way. If there is a serious reason, I don't think we should totally take the tool away, because there may be circumstances where it definitely makes sense.
What's
but
one
a
of
lot
those?
of
What's it where you would say this person should be debanked?
yeah, like pedophilia kind of stuff, those kinds of deep-seated activities. However, for me, President Trump, because even in his quotes, it's me, 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 me. He really is doing this for him, and I understand that he has a grudge because he said this happened to him. Also in the article, the First Lady, Melania Trump, said the same thing happened to her, and that she wasn't able to get their youngest son, Barron, an account, which is just unthinkable. What? I mean, you should. Why y'all punishing Barron? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I understand where he's coming from to a point, but I just hate that he always centers himself all the time. He's never got the id and the ego that we learned about in psychology. He hasn't gone beyond that. But, it's something that we should look into and again, not take all the tools out of the toolbox for the banking industry just in case. And then my last point is that it also stated that if you were debanked, they didn't have to tell you why.
Yeah.
I think you always have to tell somebody why, even if it's nefarious stuff. You have a right.
Well, so that's how it's.
No.
That's how it's.
Why?
Well, it started for, I think, real reasons. Like, if you have like a terrorist, let's say,
That's right.
who is an
That too.
American citizen,
Yes.
has a bank account, you learn that you see stuff in the bank account that's like, oh, this person's a terrorist. You have to withdraw their ability to commit a crime at your institution.
Sure.
But you also don't want to tip them off that you and possibly law enforcement, I mean, if you're doing that, you're notifying law enforcement as well. So you can't tip off a perp, let's say, if they're working on getting this guy. But what it turns into is, it's not just January 6th people, although not that they don't have a right to a bank account, but it's crypto bros who are not necessarily right-wing, who are libertarian, who are progressives. It's just people at any given moment at this point, basically, it seems, who the government wants to dissuade from doing certain behavior.
And if it's subjective,
which is not crimes.
And that's what
Yeah.
I think, like, this kind of got carried away is, I think we were talking a little bit about before we came on, that I think around 2020, there began this real pressure on corporate America to call out, quote, right and wrong. And I think traditionally, corporations, it was the old Michael Jordan adage, Republicans buy Nikes too. Companies did not wade into issues of the day unless it really affected their bottom line and they had a history on it, or they stayed away because they had customers that were on one party and customers and employees on the other side. And there became huge pressure to comment on what was happening in the social justice movement. And I ran government relations for a company that is just outside the Fortune 500 in Kansas City, Missouri, in every congressional district. And there was huge pressure to come out and start commenting. And at the time, the debate was, look, we have no history on this. So if we step into this, where do we then say when we get a phone call that we want you to comment on an issue? How are we going to now say, no, that issue we do comment on, but this issue we do not? And then that kind of, most companies commented. And then when January 6th happened, there was huge pressure on companies to call out Trump, to call out MAGA, to say never again, to never write political contributions to anyone who supported or participated in January 6th. Now, and I had this conversation with the leadership of H&R Block, what happens when Republicans get control of everything?
Dan, what was it like
First, you hire Emma, yes.
in the corporate boardroom where these decisions are being made? I mean, I think from one point of view, I think a lot of people on the left were like, no, this is morality. Like,
Correct.
we can expect companies who we're giving money to take a moral position. But on the other hand, some people would say, no, this is just capitalism. Like, it's a cynical ploy by these Fortune 500 companies to capitalize on the emotion in the air. Like, how cynical was it?
Sure. Well, no, I mean, look, it's part of it is, and I need to be careful here, beyond H&R Block, boards in general, a lot of the leadership live in the same areas, they socialize in the same circles, and they think in a similar way. And it was very popular. Blue America was outraged. To them, there was a right and a wrong, and the wrong had to be canceled and punished. Like, you had to purge it from society. And in our instance, and I know other corporate government relations heads had the same conversations with their boards. and I use the example of abortion. We're based in Missouri, the more pro-life than pro-choice. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, and this was the conversation we had, we're going to get pressure to comment to support the overturning, and we're going to get pressure from a lot of employees who say, you need to speak up against this. We're not getting involved, or my advice was, do not get involved in this. So why are we going to get involved in this? But the pressure amongst their friends, the email chains amongst CEOs that were going on, there were advertisements in the New York Times that companies were being asked to sign on to pledge to basically punish people over January 6th. Pendulum swung the other way now.
That's the thing about, well, just one thing on this to respond to Dan. Like, I think that this EO is actually, I mean, this EO deals with regulators mostly, as it should, but I think that what's happening now, where the Trump administration is cracking down on the woke behavior, I think it's such a blessing, and it's seen as a blessing in corporate America. I mean, that's just my experience. What I'm seeing in my work is, it's just like, okay, finally we can wind this down, and we don't have to justify it morally. It's just, you know, we have the
That's the corporations are feeling relieved that
yes,
they no longer have to weigh
politics.
in.
It's just pressure.
I mean, I see it differently. I think there are points where corporations should weigh in, especially if the population that's being the most aggrieved is a consumer. Let's take the Target boycott, for example. You know, the Target CEO, after George Floyd was murdered, came out and said the right stuff. He said, that could have been one of my employees. This was wrong, and we're going to do something. I have some power, so I'm going to try to do.
And they're based in Minneapolis.
Right,
Their
to right the
headquarters is in
wrong.
Minneapolis, yep.
So I just feel like this is kind of art and a science in some ways. I think about the Montgomery bus boycott, like the historian in me, where bus companies, not just in Montgomery, but that was the canary in the coal mine. Black people had to go pay and then go out and then go through the back door. And then there were only certain seats that black people could sit in. But then you are enjoying the money that comes from the black consumer. That's just one example. Is it morally right to say that we're not going to treat black people like second-class citizens?
Well, but what about abortion, let's say, which is more like...
I mean, I think, I mean,
Or January 6th.
Women having the right to control their bodies is an important thing. You are both, a corporation is also a network that is a citizen too, corporate citizenship. And so if one group is being put upon, do they have a moral obligation? Maybe not economic. And it's a fine line. Now, I want to say something about what Dan said. Now, Gallup poll just came out, and the question, desire for businesses to take a public stance rebounds. Now, I do think the pendulum went too far, because if you are using the power of the government to target a Trump or anybody like that, that's wrong. That's how I come down on it. And Democrats have no moral authority whatsoever. They're hypocrites. But the Gallup poll, desire for businesses to take a public stance rebounds. And the question was, do you think businesses in general should take a public stance on current events? Now, it's very close. It's 51 to 49.
Wow.
But it's went up. So it was down, it dipped, because there's a backlash.
So it's 50.
But now it's back up.
But
51% want them to take a stand on political. I find that.
yeah.
1 second. I just want to tell people. So the White House did email out the executive order just now against debanking. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, what I was going to say is I think there's a place for it when it's authentic and consistent to who you are. And I'll give you two examples that I think speak very well to this. Nike historically has stood by their athletes. So when Colin Kaepernick wanted to take a knee, Nike stood by him. I personally thought that was great. But Nike, for their whole history, has stood by athletes who take controversial stands. So they weren't going into uncharted waters. Ben & Jerry's, and I love a good ice cream,
I love Ben.
has historically been very progressive. Same with Patagonia, right? They are consistent.
Yeah.
So when Ben & Jerry's takes a stand, you say to yourself, well, that is what that brand has been forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when companies that have no history
That's such a good
are
point.
like, I'm going to be with the cool kids, that is where, because look, what's cool today, for one, is not cool for, 49, 50% of the country. And then they say, gosh darn it, why won't you speak out about A, B, C, and D?
There could always be unintended consequences.
true.
Some of this stuff
Such a
is
good point.
intended.
Yeah.
But there are unintended consequences. So it's I mean.
That's it, exactly. But that's the thing I think that made as the pendulum swung, the cringe increased, because that's it. It's like there's certain brands.
Words to live by.
Exactly. As is true about so much. But it's like there's certain brands where their brand identity is being political, and
sure.
exactly. Ben & Jerry's and Nike are great examples.
Right. Yep.
You know, but
Or
then,
B corporations too. I mean, that is a way to say
but
you care about the environment. You know, Aveda. You know,
Right,
places like that where you know, Lush.
you had every single one having to come out and make a proclamation, and in many cases, the most like cliche, unthoughtful, like clearly focus grouped PR worked kind of fake thing. And I mean, no wonder people got turned off. And then all of a sudden, though, you know, it gets a little too hot, and you have the government coming in and trying to control it, which I think is the worst case scenario.
Nina, what did you make of the whole like Bud Light thing? I mean, speaking of a company,
I was about to bring them up.
Just abandoning its obvious consumer and doing this whole pendulum cringe act. Like, how did that read to you, that moment?
To me, it goes back to something Dan said, and I think Emma Jo too. What is the core? Are you doing this just solely to make a buck or to be with the cool kids, or do you really, really believe this? If you really believe it, then you got to stand up for it. But a lot of this stuff is being done to make the money and to be with the cool kids, and I hate to say that. And it has no moral heft to it, like these companies just flapping in the wind. And that is why when you weaponize government in those ways, eventually, the target that you seek to hurt, it boomerangs back to you. You know, if it goes too far, there's going to be a point in time where the other party is in charge, and they're going to try to do to you what you did to them, and it just, the cycle, it's a vicious cycle.
I mean, one of the most talked about things in corporate America is when you try to acquire new customers, you don't fire your existing ones. And I think that's where like Budweiser or Anheuser-Busch kind of went off the rails a little bit, was you always have to remember who your core is, and then it's additive. And sometimes that effort you subtract. I think to bring this back to politics, this is where, for all the Democrats that get outraged about some of the stuff the Trump administration is doing, you got to look in the mirror and say, we did a different version of this to try to get people debanked, to try to get companies to call stuff out. So when Trump now goes after law firms, goes after universities, you can say, well, wait, this is outrageous. Well, like the way he and a lot of people look at it is, what was good for the goose, we're now doing the same thing to undo this. Again, tens of millions of people disagree with what he's doing, but how he's doing it, we have to look in the mirror and say, for the last 10 years.
And at least he's up front with it.
Yeah.
He owns it. I got to give him credit.
That's right.
But I also believe there comes a point, though, even if the majority agrees with something, if that majority is wrong, you still got to take a position.
But Nina, don't you feel like a lot of the issues where it was very clear cut, like the morality, like segregation, okay? Like, it's so obvious how sick that was. Now I feel like all of the dividing issues, there's just nothing on the table that is so, like even abortion, okay? We're probably divided around this table on abortion, but to say that it's obvious the way it is about race relations, which is right and which is wrong, are there really still issues, political issues that are like so obviously good versus evil today, Emma?
I think it depends on who you ask, of course. You know, I mean, I tend to think that it is a really bad call for companies, even if their board feels a certain strong way, or their CEO feels a strong way, or whoever it is feels a super strong way about saying, like, I don't think, again, like we were just talking about, unless it's part of their brand identity already, to come out and take a stand, even if it's the most important issue to them. You know, I think that there's something to be said for personal advocacy, and all corporations, as far as I know, allow and encourage and often support their employees in advocacy.
Yep.
And I know a lot of companies will match donations that their employees make to certain causes without question. You know, there's no cause that they don't like that they won't match. Like, they let you do that. And I think that there's a big difference between individuals and even, let's say, maybe high-ranking individuals in the organization taking a personal stand versus taking the brand and the logo and bringing it to take a political position on really anything. There isn't anything that I can think of that I think is appropriate to do.
I want to put something to. Oh, go ahead. Nina.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I want to put a theory, a hypothesis to you guys. It seems to me like for a long time, let's say like in the 80s and the 90s, the Republicans had a lot of political power, and the left was kind of locked out of that, you know, like in the sort of Reagan boom and what have you. But so what they did was they invested a lot in like culture. Like there was just this ascendancy of like liberal, like it was very clear that a lot of the culture that was being produced had a more like left-wing liberal cast to it, let's say. Okay, then suddenly the liberals and the Democrats gained political power. And so for a while there, they had political power and cultural power. Then the Donald Trump era started, and you saw the Republicans sort of seize political power. The Democrats were like shocked. Like they never thought they were going to have to compete at that level again. But they still had the cultural power in 2016 and in 2020. But now it seems to me like they are losing that cultural supremacy that they had for so long, where being left was obviously cool. Young people were obviously on the left. Like they produced, you know, the movies, they wrote the novels. Now it seems like there's almost this cringy aspect to that, what was considered the height of culture for so long, and it's now the right that has this kind of edgy, young, cool factor, and it's encroaching now increasingly on the cultural territory. Am I right, Dan?
I actually completely agree with you, and I think it's one of the reasons we're still in a ditch as a Democratic Party. We cannot come to grips with what you just said. Think about this. Trump is on the offensive on AI, one of the industries of the future. Crypto. He's on the offensive. All these podcasters and influencers, you know, he has good times and bad times with them, but like they generally are with him. We keep telling ourselves this is just a Trump phenomenon. Like the moment he's gone, it's going to snap back to the way it was, and the long arc of history is on our side, and like we are right. Instead of looking in the mirror and saying, wait a second, the country kind of flirted with this in 2017 to 2021, 2022, and now they're snapping back. They don't like all of it. And we have to look in the mirror and say, okay, if we want to win and have a national majority again, we got to make some changes. We got some stuff wrong.
Democrats are delusional.
Yeah.
Really. I mean,
You said in 5 seconds. It took me 45.
Right. they delusional.
TLDR.
Yeah. I'm just. Hypocrisy is caught up with the Democratic Party, and they don't know how to deal with it. For everything, and I don't agree with President Trump for about 99.9%, because I'm holding out that 1% that him and I are going to agree on something. I want it to happen, God knows.
Holding out 1%.
I feel like he would really like you.
I think he would too. The Donald, okay, go on, call the sister. We can talk it out. But this is the thing. Democrats, people hate hypocrites.
Yeah.
And it's just really caught up. When you talk about the cultural swing and all of that, and people realize, let me give an example. As much as Democrats decry President Donald J. Trump on democracy. Now, I wish Democrats really did give a damn about democracy. I wish they did.
Me too.
But let me tell you what they did in 2024. They propped up President Biden. They propped up Bidenomics, even though the majority of the people were saying we can't afford stuff. Yeah. They did not have a real primary. Then you got President Obama and George Clooney pushes President Biden out of the race, along with Representative Nancy Pelosi, that gang.
They took his hand in his arm.
And then you don't. And then you in certain states, you kick off the ballot. Democrats. Yep. People like Congressman Dean Phillips, who is the only actively elected Dem who had the courage to run. You mess with Marianne Williamson. You mess with people like Dr. Cornel West, et cetera, et cetera. Democrats did that, not Republicans. True. So it's just examples of people. I think people are over the hypocrisy. And because in the United States of America, we only got two parties, which I think is insane to ask over 300 million people to pick from the two, the pendulum keeps switching back and forth to both of them, because I believe most people in this country don't really have a home. And I'm speaking from I keep hitting my mic, sorry you guys. I'm speaking from a working class.
Well, I'll give you one other thing that actually really frustrates me about our party on democracy. When we had the majorities in 2021 and 2022, they did nothing on the Voting Rights Act.
Oh, absolutely.
They went into the black community and
John
would
Lewis.
and would like speak to a church and say, we really care, it's outrageous. But they would turn around and be like, now let's talk about Build Back Better and the Green New Deal.
That's it.
We had opportunities on abortion, on the Civil Rights Act to do something, but they never believed in it. It was a BS throwaway line to make the black community feel happy for 5 minutes and say, now go vote.
And we care about, the black community cares about other things other than voting rights. Do we have a unique position in the universe on voting because of historically what happened to black people in this country? But it's not the only thing. Even then, we had the ability, the Democrats could have increased the minimum wage.
Yeah, totally.
Did not do it. And I had insiders who were telling me that President Biden was saying he's not going to do it.
Yeah, he didn't want to.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you want to blame Republicans. No, when you one thing that President Donald J. Trump is showing two-way community is that when you got power, baby, use it. Don't play with it.
That is the lesson.
Don't play with it.
I think that is
That's
so,
right.
and it speaks to your honesty that like you're able to recognize that and admire it rather than be like threat to democracy. It's like, no, this is what power is
I had this
for.
conversation with my mother today. That's what the Democratic Party has to learn to do is use
What did
power.
your mother say?
The Democratic Party knows how to
And
use power.
she can't stand Donald Trump. And I'm like, look, he's not doing anything, in my opinion, he's not doing things that are illegal. He just understands maximalist power. And he's using it at, full throttle. And we ought to think about the same thing.
We have our first caller, Anne. Anne, thank you so much for joining the group chat. Welcome in. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, hi. I'm from around the Chicago area. The only question I have is like,
Where's Ann from?
how come when let's say when they said that a baker can't, what is the difference? A baker isn't forced to bake a cake for a lesbian couple, and then why should a bank be forced to have the bank do the banking thing? And
What
that's
a
my
great
question.
question.
That's a great question.
And I think the answer legally would be that this is my understanding, but you all will tell me if I'm wrong, and Ann, you'll tell me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is that with the baker's case, because that was an act of artistry that he would have to be engaged in, it was considered speech. Whereas with the banks are very, 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 very regulated to begin with, and this was an additional regulation that was added that is now being perceived to be very heavily weighted in one direction. What would you say, Emma Jo?
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons why it's different. First of all, you would imagine that in a geographic area, there's more than one bakery. There isn't, that baker doesn't have like a monopoly on your ability to access cake, which is different than the big banks.
Shame. I do want my cake and eat it too.
Personally, I would ungay myself if that were the case. But the second reason why it's different too is that the banks don't, unlike the baker, have a moral qualm with serving people who are at January 6th, let's say, or people who do crypto. Or they were in a position where they were basically in a hostage situation by regulators it was the regulators who were political, and then they were going to the banks and saying, MAGA is a reputational risk. Yeah. So, you are jeopardizing the rest of your clients by having MAGA accounts. And these are the accounts that we think are suspicious or whatever. This was pressure from regulators. It wasn't the banks going, and I'm going to search on Facebook for every single account holder and see what they're posting. No. They want more accounts. This is coming from a different place and a different direction. It's a very different scenario than the baker.
Dan.
Yeah, I don't remember all the details of the baker's case, and I think you guys have both said it well, but I agree. The power of the federal government to lean into whether it was the tech companies to kind of, shut down stuff or not, the banks to kick Trump out, and people around him. Corey Lewandowski on Mark Halperin's podcast said that he too was kicked off after January 6th and had to try to go find. In fact, it was Scott Bassett who helped him find a bank to literally
How
put
did they
his
get
money.
their money back? Did they get a check in the mail?
Well, what they do is they would send them letters that say you have 20 days
to get your money.
To go find a place, and we are closing your account. And so in the instance of Donald Trump, being very fortunate to have a lot of money, he wasn't all in one account. You have dozens of accounts. And so they had to, and according to the president, he called around to the heads of other banks, and they all said, no, we wouldn't do it. And there are other people who have had similar experiences, and it was really in reaction to January 6th, just this moral judgment that this was outrageous, and we are going to cancel. We're going to make it impossible for you to do business.
I just have to say, I feel so heartened to be sitting here with all of you representing the full spectrum of opinion in America, and all of us think this is not okay. Like, it's just a very, like, first of all, obviously this conversation, and thank you, Anne, could only happen on two-way, but like, there's something about that I find, obviously, Robby would agree with us because he's a libertarian, but...
Yes.
Robby's head would be exploding.
Yes, exactly.
Anne, thank you so much for joining us. Can we please bring in our next caller? ML, nice to see
Hello,
you. Thanks for joining us. Remind everybody where you are and tell us what's on your mind.
I am in St. Louis, Missouri. I just wanted to comment on the DNC platform for 2024. The final platform PDF listed Donald Trump 150 times. That is not a party that is looking for. I mean, I'll drop the link in the thing, but anyway, I just wanted to comment on that. And then I was just wondering if you thought that the Democrats who, if they were ever going to be able to kind of find their groove again, or what that, like last week we talked about Kamala and like what she would wrap herself around as an issue. I guess from today's date going forward into the midterms, what do you think is the number one issue that the Democrats can just, they're not on the 80-20 side of it where they could actually, find purchase and do that. And then curious if you get to it. If not, that's fine too. On the DOJ going forward with grand jury for the Russiagate, Obamagate, all that crap stuff. And if they would do it in DC or if they would do it elsewhere. So I know that's kind of a lot, but again, love the group. Hope to see Robby next week. But love the group.
Thank you.
We have
so
a new
much,
producer.
Emma.
We just got a whole.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. I'll answer them very briefly. I really I really think this Russiagate investigation is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I don't know why he's looking back. I don't know why he's relitigating. He promised 1,000,000 times during the campaign, our success will be our retribution. And I was like, oh, those words just hit me in my soul. And I don't know why I think it's just ridiculous.
I can tell you exactly why and why you.
Okay, wait. I want to answer the Democrats, and then we'll do a quick round robin. On the Democrats, I think the two issues that they should embrace in a positive way is housing, as I said last week, and healthcare, which we said. Two issues that just if they could come out and say, we are building houses, we're deregulating, we're getting just more stock out there, young people, we are the party that's protecting your future, I think that would be really big. And then I don't know if Medicaid for all, Medicare for all, a public option, something to where it's not this horribly unfair situation where very poor people and very rich people have great health care, but the hardest working people stuck in the middle have no health care and are broke and spend every dime they're able to save on their deductibles. It's so gross, and I don't think the Republicans have a good answer to it. I will say one more thing on the Democrats, which is I think those are the two things they should embrace positively. If they can't get their heads out of their butts on immigration and on the trans issue, it doesn't matter what promises they make. Those are kind of, to me, bottom. They have a floor and they have a ceiling, and they can't get off the floor until they get normal on those two issues. If they can do that and pull out something on healthcare and on housing, it's bad news for the Republicans. That's my view. Emma Jo.
Yeah, I sort of basically agree. I definitely agree with most of what you said, but I would just maybe add a detail to that, and not just housing, but single-family homes. I think that there is a huge longing in this country for a middle-class life. Nothing amazing, nothing crazy, also nothing, too modern, and people just want a house. People want a house, and they want to load it up with a family. I think if Democrats really focus on single-family homes, returning that feeling of a middle-class life and that ability to live just nicely and normally and be able to breathe and have kids in the backyard, huge win. And then I would add to that trade. I think that Democrats could really do a lot on trade, onshoring, bringing back good jobs, just to obviously allow for them to buy that single-family home that they should develop.
Yeah, well, listen, I agree with both you and Batya. I would say that Medicare for All by name has over 60% polling across the political spectrum, period. Yeah. Your point, Batya, about people having to pay deductibles and co-pays. You know, in my hometown of Cleveland, the Cleveland Clinic, which is a world-renowned hospital, they had decided that if you couldn't pay your copay, they were gonna send you back home. Like, let you come in for your pre-appointment, your preventative care, appointment, and if you could not pay the copay, they were gonna send you home. And you know I wasn't about to let that happen. And I raised so much hell, and I called actively elected people in Cleveland, I called the faith-based community, and I sent a message to the Cleveland Clinic. You can do this if you want to, but I tell you what, your reputation is gonna be ruined. Yeah. Because we're not gonna let you. Can you imagine a world-class hospital saying to Emma Jo when she comes there, oh, you don't have your copay? Oh, you gotta reschedule until you have it. And I'm gonna tell you, baby, they reverse course. You better believe it. Because unlike Target, I can't necessarily get people to boycott the Cleveland Clinic, but they care more about their reputation. And so now, if you don't have the copay, they'll put you on a payment plan with no interest. So Medicare for All is popular. Now, how we do it, but we're the only industrialized nation that doesn't do it, so why can't we do it? Yes, housing, you know, an AP poll came out that revealed that 86% of people in this country are stressed. They use the word stressed about paying for groceries. 76% of the American people are stressed about their pay on their job, and 75% of the American people are stressed about housing.
It's horrible. It's horrible. I just want to also make a note to the 2A community. Like, this is who Nina is. If you don't agree with her politics, do you know somebody who would walk over to that hospital and say, don't you dare do this? Because I'll be out here in front every day making a ruckus on behalf of the poor people in this community. This is why we love you, Nina. Dan.
So I'll actually build on something that, Nina, like your passion. I think there's two things that the next Democratic, nominee or candidates need to do. One, as a party, we have to stop the cancel culture. People who have different opinions. So RFK was welcomed by Donald Trump. Tulsi Gabbard was welcomed by Look, it's raw politics. They want their votes. They want their following. We have to become a tolerant party again of dissenting views, right? Whether it's on transgender, whether it's on the border. Like, we should say, shutting off the southern border is a great thing. If we're given power back, we're going to keep it closed off and not feel like you're going to be beaten with a stick by advocates for immigration rights. The second thing is, candidates have to be authentic. You were passionate. So you march down there because you fundamentally believe it's outrageous and you want to help people. Yeah. What we can't do is say, we went into a lab, we polled, we focus grouped, and this is the answer. And then you're going to get up there and be like, Medicare for All is right because of one, two, three. So I don't care what your issue is. Whatever makes you get out of bed and say, I'm going to go get the crap kicked out of me by J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and the blowtorch. But I'm going to run over the coals because I believe in doing this. And it has to be, I think, on the economy to help people with middle class, working class people who want to get ahead. People believed Bill Clinton really wanted to fight for them, that he came out of, Arkansas, he was for it. People believe Donald Trump, who grew up in Brooklyn, did business in Queens, is an authentic street fighter, and he's fighting for us. They think Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton just wanted to get elected.
Yeah. So, I want to just add two very quick points to something that Dan said. I was talking to one of my team members just yesterday, and he said, we're privileged to be able to buy groceries. And I stopped him. We're not privileged to be able to buy groceries. Everybody should be able to buy groceries. I mean, just the thought that everyday Americans are thinking, my God, some of my sisters and brothers can't afford groceries, but I'm privileged. I mean, what a base level thought. We should all want everybody in this nation and all over the world to have their basic necessities met, and that's clean air, clean water, clean food. And then the point about former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, she was actually pushed out. And she was pushed out. And even RFK Jr. said they wouldn't even call him when he was running. Politics 101. If I'm competing, if we all running in a race and I come out on top, I'm calling you Batya, I'm calling you Emma Jo, and I'm calling you Dan, because I need to try to get you on my side or at least neutralize you. And I'll never forget, just even in 2020, I mean, how Tulsi you know, the how she was treated.
Yeah.
I never liked it. And her and I actually, you know, started to build a relationship. And I always thought, even though I don't agree, I think she's found her home. I really do. And I don't begrudge her that. Now, I don't agree with this going after President Obama and all of that. But that's the kind of conversation. I'm not about to drop you just because we don't necessarily agree. And I hate the way the Democratic Party, both in 2016 did Tulsi when she exposed that they were cheating against Senator Bernie Sanders, and also what happened to her even in 2020.
Look at how they look at how the party treated. I mean, you know this.
And look how they
anyways,
treated me.
Bernie Sanders, like, he
Yeah.
was considered a heretic in 16. This like lunatic fringe candidate.
Emma, I have a feeling, you know, the Republican Party is going to be coming in for some of this in 2028. You know, we're probably not going to have time to get to the whole Steve Bannon thing, but like, you know, we're sitting here on our high horse, like, haha, Dems in disarray. But like,
Yeah, I'm like, this has been a whole show,
you
just
know,
ripping on the Democrats.
in 2028, there's going to be
The whole year. Let's not like keep it to the show.
a totally bruising primary for the Republicans. Is there any chance they don't descend into a similar, like...
I think it'll get, you know, it could get like down in the mud, but I think it has a different vibe and a different flavor and an easier healing process than the Democrats have, because the thing about the Democratic Party, in my perception, is that it is, there is a consolidation of power at the at the top of the system that controls the whole thing, and that is the establishment Democratic Party, and they have that grip. And I don't see the progressives, although I think the progressives are more popular among people, and I think that the policies that the progressives espouse basically are more popular among Democrats, like just the Democrat diaspora, you know. But in DC, those topics are not. Look, Tulsi, Bernie, you are not allowed to have those opinions, and you are not allowed in the door at the DNC if you have those opinions, which creates resentment and anger that you can't heal just after the fight's over, you know?
You're preaching my gospel.
So wait,
But I was just gonna say though, so when the Republican, like, you know, Bannon's gonna jump in against Vance, maybe Rubio's in, who knows who else, whatever.
Tulsi's probably in.
Yeah, probably.
That would be actually super sick, and I would love that. But that'd be awesome. She's great. But you know, at least that fight could get dirty. It could get brutal. You know, it could get mean. All the influencers are gonna like hate each other for a bit. But at the end, at least we'll know that it wasn't unfair. Whoever won because they won the most support and they beat the other guys. It's not corrupt.
So I have one question because you know Steve Bannon. If he's thinking about it, there must be something he sees in J.D. Vance and says, not him, or I'm better than him. What is it that is animating Bannon? Because the party and the president seem to be generally lining up behind Vance, and Rubio's kind of hanging in the wings, saying the president said they'd be a good combined ticket. What does Bannon see that says that's my opening?
I don't think Bannon thinks that way. I really don't think Bannon thinks that way. I don't think he thinks in terms of like, oh, I'm looking around and like, you have a weakness and I can like run through that weakness. I don't think that his brain works like he just like lives and loves the movement. And like he feels like an ideological father of the movement from the days at Breitbart, you know, and he's like OG economic populist, nationalist, right-winger. And I don't think he like looks at others and sees things that way. He's focused on the way that he wants the movement to continue and the agenda that he wants to achieve. And like, I think that—
And Vance is not sufficient then?
I think that it's like one of those things where like, do you think that I'm a worse mother than you because than you are a father because you won't give me your children to raise? Like, no.
Yeah, but there's only one ticket,
you
Emma
want to
Jo.
raise your child.
There's
No,
only
well,
one
I
ticket.
think Bannon sees this movement as his child. And like, I think that if I, like, again, I haven't, this isn't a conversation that I'm relaying.
Yeah, no, just you have an understanding of the movement
as
and
his
him.
child in the same way you wouldn't give me your son to raise, not because you think I'm a bad mother, but because it's your son. I think that that's kind of how Bannon feels. Like, he wants to be the one to now bring the movement to its next
Iteration.
Like bring it forward.
Let's bring in Rebecca. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind. Do we have Rebecca?
Yes, unmuted.
Yes. Yep.
Am
we
I
can hear you.
there?
Yep.
Oh, Okay, I'm sorry. Hi. I was wondering about all the information about Israel and everything. Where does that like boil down come from? Like, are there people like really inside seeing everything and reporting back?
What? Oh, I think we lost you for a second. You were asking about Israel,
can't
but I wasn't.
understand, really.
Yeah, sure. What? Oh, others are moving. I think it's just her connection.
Oh, okay. So this is a very interesting question, Rebecca, because the situation actually changed today. For the first
Do you mind
time,
please just repeating the
yes,
question?
Rebecca's question was, where are we getting our information about Israel from? Are there reporters on the ground? It's a great question. Did I get it right, Rebecca? Just give us a thumbs up because we're having trouble hearing you.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Great. So the reporting in Israel itself comes from independent journalists. In Gaza, there are no journalists, independent journalists. Since Hamas took over Gaza, the journalists who were there, for example, the AP journalists, had to run everything by Hamas before publication, whether it was a photo or whether it was text. So if you were a journalist like me who was an editor, if you were looking for a photo to put on an article about Hamas, until October 7th, if you put in Hamas militant, there was going to be nothing on Getty since 2000, whenever it was, 2004, because they policed what information was allowed out of the Gaza Strip. Now, of course, Israel right now is occupying about 75% of it because they're at war with Hamas. So they are the ones who are controlling much of Gaza right now, and they have not allowed independent or foreign journalists into Gaza. They say due to the danger. But a lot of journalists have pushed back on that. They've said that's on us, let us in, we want to see for ourselves. Today, the first journalist was allowed in. It was Bill Hemmer for Fox News. He went to Rafah. He visited one of the aid distribution sites. He interviewed a member of this aid organization, this American aid organization that's been distributing aid. And he was given the permission to film and to see Rafah for himself. There are almost no buildings left standing. And in his interview with Bibi Netanyahu said to him, "You were the first, and we are now going to allow foreign journalists in, because when you see for yourself, you can do a better job of understanding Israel's position." What the Israelis were saying is the reason there are no buildings left is because Hamas booby-trapped the buildings. And so when they would go into the buildings in order to check them for hostages, they had to destroy the building because otherwise they would have been bombed themselves and killed. Thank you so much for your question, Rebecca, and keep coming back and keep thinking critically for yourself. That was a really important and a really good question, and I hope I answered it well and accurately. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where you are and what is on your mind.
Well, thank you so much for calling on me. This is my first time calling into the group chat. I love what you guys do. Two-way. I'm Jeffrey Frischner. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin, originally from Queens, New York, by way of San Diego, California, USMC. Retired down in near Green Bay, and I just think that so much talk about 80-20 and how Trump has been so successful by focusing on 80-20 policy things, and the issue in this country is hyper partisanship. I don't know that you can ever. That's the 80% are partisans. I believe the 20% are what's in play in every election. But what I love about two-way and I love about the group chat is you actually have different opinions on policies that is not partisan. And I just think that we need to personally, I think we need to spread the net, continue to have conversations with people. I'm actually an Uber driver, and I have conversations with people all the time. Most people are religious, and I cannot have a conversation with them, and that's okay, about politics. But those who are very open, and they're usually open-minded.
Jeffrey, thank you so much. Tell us one thing that you think that you have learned from your job and the people you talk about that nobody talks about, that nobody knows about, that you've learned and that we should be talking about?
I believe that it's about, my kids are all, I'm a conservative, I'm a 3-time Trump voter. My kids are all on the other side. So if I want to have a relationship with my kids, I have to be open-minded. And staying open-minded is critical. I don't know that people see it when I have a background in addiction and recovery, and I think people are just basically religious, but also addicted to what their jam is. And having an open mind, being relaxed, allowing your biases, putting aside your biases. And I always try to take my kids' point of view and consider it. And I think that's the biggest thing that that's hard to do for people. And I don't know that you can get there unless you have an awakening. So I actually am woke, but woke in being intellectually honest and open-minded.
Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for sharing that and joining us. God bless you. This is really what 2A is all about. Thank you so much for that. So why don't we end on that? Why don't we each talk about what we love most and get most out of 2A? And I'll start, and I'm just going to shamelessly steal what Jeffrey said, which is, it is a space that is safe enough for me to do the very scary work of opening my mind and releasing myself from, as Jeffrey put it, my addiction to my jam, and listening to you every morning, and to you, and to you, and like really, it's safe enough that I can sort of venture out into that very scary territory of maybe I'm wrong about this. Like, what would it look like if I was wrong about this? Emma.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure, definitely. And I think it actually can't be overstated. It's so rare that I don't know about you guys, but that I get to sit and hang out with like all people with different perspectives than me, and I find it very valuable. And I like it too because like I don't personally feel like I have to convert anybody. Like that is so not what I'm about. You know, like I really like want people to just feel like we can just have a conversation and that nobody is intimidated or that anyone's trying to push anybody into a different belief or whatever. But I also really love like the audience, like, and getting to interact with the audience. Something about it feels Rush-esque, and that was my like favorite politics show forever. And
my brothers too.
Yeah, your brother. I really want to hang with him.
What's your favorite thing about 2A?
Just to sum up what Jeffrey said, well, first of all, being with all of you, but 2 quotes. One is James Baldwin, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And then Stephen Covey, a leadership guru, said that seek first to understand and then to be understood.
Yeah.
And we do that on our show. A 2A platform allows us to do it. It's powerful.
Yeah, it is for real.
Yeah.
I did not to belabor everyone, just hearing different viewpoints and actually hearing it and listening and thinking about it, to me, is the best. And before I was on the morning meeting, I tuned in every single day, and every day I would get off when the Zoom ended and just say, wow, let me think about that. Let me go for a walk. Let me kind of process that. And that is the best to me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all, and thank you all for making this experience so special for all of us.
Yeah, we're going to join hands and sing Kumbaya.
See you all next week on the group chat.
Because we didn't talk Russiagate. That's why we're all kumbaya.
It'll be 5 once again, hopefully, please God. Thank you, everybody, and see you soon.